Hello, everyone. We'll just get started in about 1 minute. Well, welcome to this presentation on work-life balance. Today, the presentation will last for about 45 minutes, and then we'll leave 15 minutes at the end for any conversations or questions that you might have. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Michelle Cooper. I am a registered nurse as my professional background, but I've been a consultant for the last 30 years with experience as a facilitator, coach, trainer, as well as doing consulting. I have lots of experience in both government, healthcare, not-for-profit, and private organizations. And my specialty is actually in leadership and organizational development and facilitating meetings where it enables authentic engagement, mentorship, and executive and manager coaching. I'm also an assistant clinical professor at the School of Nursing at McMaster University. So today's topic, the work-life balance, is really, it's an overview of and an introduction to the concept. This is a topic that's been very important to employers for a long time because the work-life balance affects both productivity and organizational performance. It's important that that work-life balance can help reduce burnout and turnover, and that also affects their costs and the productivity of their employees. Individuals care because work-life balance significantly impacts the way our quality of work and our quality of life. Most of our waking hours are spent at work. So if we're full-time employees, it's really important for us to find a fulfilling career that nurtures our health and balance. And it's important if we're able to enjoy all parts of our life. This is particularly important right now as many of us are working at home because of the COVID restrictions and the physical distancing. Lots of my coaching clients are saying it's actually more difficult to find that work-life balance when they're working at home than it was when they're working at work. So it is an interesting topic for the times we're in right now. So there's three things we're going to work on. The first is to define work-life balance, discuss why it's important, and to share some strategies for achieving work-life balance. So just some practical tips for both employers and employees too. So what is work-life balance? It's really an important aspect of a healthy workplace, but it does mean different things to different people. What the research has shown is that there's a lot of generational differences, and although we can't make really sweeping generalizations, typically what we find is that baby boomers, which those people who are born between 1945 and 1960, are really value the opportunity for employment, and they crave both stability and employment per se. Their parents went through the Depression, they were post-war, so employment was always a challenge. And baby boomers tend to be loyal and to stay at their jobs for a long time. Generation Xers, born 1961 to 1980, were exposed to the effect of the hardworking baby boomers and what the impact that made on their families. So as a result, they actually tend to put a little bit more emphasis on creating work-life balance in their own lives. They prioritize often spending time with their family and are most often will use their personal time to be able to spend time with family or request telecommuting or flexible hours. Now millennials, there's been a lot of attribution to millennials. We think of the Google times. that we that they really isn't pool tables and all of those. They don't discount those, but really what's important to them is to have a career path that will support their lifestyle. Many of them are faced with huge burdens of student debt, the cost of housing for them. They've got many of them are starting to have children going into universities. I'm astounded with the cost of daycare as well. So those are the things that they look for in a job and in work-life balance. So it does mean different things to different people. And even within the generations, it's important to talk to people and find out what they like and what is important to them. So there's a couple of definitions that I quite liked. This one came from worklife.com. Work-life balance is a meaningful daily achievement and enjoyment in each of my 4 life quadrants: work, family, friends, and self. It's the ability to keep a healthy balance between business and family, activity and reflection, work and leisure. That was from Bob Anderson at the Leadership Circle. So it's as you can see from this, it's a whole person activity. So the work-life balance isn't just about hours of work. It's about how do we look after our whole selves, both in the workplace and outside of the workplace. How do we address the mind? So we often think that when we go to work, it's just they want our physical selves, or they just want our intellect or our balance and our brains. But it's really important that for our work-life balance, that we find a way to deal with our spirit as well. So that's our belief in oneself and the belief in something larger than ourself, and the notion that we're not separate from others. And the idea of our emotions being, we have emotions, but often we found, or we think that we need to leave them behind at work or hide them in work or life. And it's important that we find balance with being able to express and understand our emotions. And relationships are also critical in our work-life balance. So healthy relationships are central to our resilience, and we're actually wired to be in relationships with others. So why is it important? I think we could probably list a number of reasons ourselves, that there's risks and benefits. If we don't have work-life balance, it tends to lead to unhappiness, poor health. It can lead to financial loss and burnout. And the benefits, though, are on the opposing side. We can have better health, there's higher productivity, and higher fulfillment. And it can help to strengthen relationships as well. So let's start a little bit with the risks. When we're out of balance, it creates stress. And when we go under stress, our brain treats stress as if it's a threat. And so our reptilian brain goes into that place where it sends us into a fight and flight or freeze pattern. We all kind of know about that the impact of stress over a long period of time is to secrete hormones into our system, which over time can be toxic. It keeps us on high alert all the time. It can reduce the secretion of the helpful hormones that we need to be healthy and well. The impact of that over time is decreased attention, decreased perception, short-term memory loss, difficulty in learning, and difficulty in word finding, which you can see a little bit of that even as you're doing a presentation. Difficulty finding words is a little bit part of the stress. When we're under stress for extraordinary periods of time, that can produce some health risks. That includes obesity. The reason why it's obesity is that we tend to be drawn to foods that are high in carbs and high in sugar. And those foods actually, although they satisfy immediate cravings, they actually spike our blood sugar, and and it increases our stress. Obesity often happens too because under stress, our body is a way to try and reduce some of the toxic hormones in our system when we're under long periods of stress. They can actually use fat cells to absorb the stress hormones. Some of the physical impacts, as we probably heard about, there's an increased incidence of heart attacks, and 60% increase in people who are at high risk or in high stress, increase in strokes. There can be cancer-related illnesses, and there's also immune deficiencies that can happen as a result of all of these stress and this continuous stress. And people get exhausted. And so when we're exhausted, what's interesting is we often don't sleep well. And then we lose our motivation, we lose our ambition, then we don't feel like being active, which are all things that we need to do to keep ourselves even moving and staying well. And all of this can have a really negative impact on our mental health. We know that there's high risk of anxiety, depression, and other mental health disorders when we're under persistent stress. The other impact of imbalance in our work life is loss of interest, is burnout. So that results, or it manifests as a loss of interest. A lack of emotion sometimes, so people get flat emotioned. Then a loss of motivation, so people don't feel like they want to do anything, not only at work, but at home. And it can also just lead further to the mental health issues that we discussed earlier, possibly depression. What happens is that with burnout, people end up having more time off, and there's going to be attendance issues. There's also what we call presenteeism. People may show up for work, but they are just there in body. They're not feeling like they can contribute, and they're unhappy. So what are some of the benefits of a work-life balance? One of the benefits is improved mental and physical health. So when we're under stress, we tend to be internally focused, and we aren't paying attention to ourselves, and we kind of get on that hamster wheel or loop of the next thing. So being triggered over and over again. So we just keep adding into the cycle of the stress loop, and we need to take a time to break away from it. When we can get into balance and break away from that stress and pause, we become more aware of what's happening in our bodies, what's happening around us, and identify some potential health problems much earlier than we might have before. With work-life balance, we actually tend to have a more healthy lifestyle. So we tend to look to be outside more, to spend more time with family, to look for activities that and make healthy choices that help us develop both our body and our mind. Work-life balance can also increase our sense of fulfillment. If you think about being in burnout and not feeling productive, sometimes that also creates that negative downward spiral for ourselves of how we don't feel good enough, and then we can start to be hard on ourselves, and then we don't feel like we're achieving, and then that is a cycle that takes us down and down. When we have balance, then we have higher levels of productivity, higher energy for our productivity, and that promotes a sense of achievement. So we can work on goals, we can achieve goals. And this is true in our home life as well as our work life. So we think about balance as it's sometimes our balance can be out at work. It could also be out at home. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. When we feel fulfilled, that we feel happier. And when we feel happier, we're more satisfied in our work and our life, and we're often more engaged in work and life too. Work-life balance can also promote teamwork and relationships. So you know what it's like when you work with somebody who's very positive and optimistic. That can have a really positive effect on those people that individual works with. And it can actually elevate the morale and mood of a team. When we are not so internally focused or in our loop of stress, we can actually notice where others are and have care and compassion for others. And we know when people are feeling cared about and we have compassion, that enhances relationships and teamwork. We may be more inspired to be kind and generous when we're in this space of balance. We know when we feel positive and happy, that part of the resilience, part of our happiness is in how we can be supportive to others. And that could include mentoring and developing others. And all in all, in this place of balance, there's more motivation to work with others, to collaborate, to achieve goals together. So let's just look at a few strategies for achieving health and balance in our work life. So we know there's the individual makes a contribution and the organization makes a contribution. It's important for the organization, and it's at their best interest, to promote work-life balance for many reasons. A healthy workplace attracts and retains employees. It's more productive and effective, and the organizations can be more successful as a result. However, work-life balance is also an inside job. The individual is responsible for addressing the issues for which they have control. They're responsible for their own health and balance. And we think of the adage, when we can't get back on airplanes, the idea of being looking on and putting on your own oxygen mask first. We know that if we don't look after ourselves and take care of ourselves, then nobody else will look after us, and we're not going to be in a place to be of service to others either. So let's just look at some of the strategies in the organization that can help address work-life balance. The first is flexibility. What I mean by that is that individual needs are considered, such as flexible scheduling, telecommuting, and looking at how can we support others to address issues that might be important to their work-life balance. For instance, if a parent has a child who has a recital in the middle of the afternoon, can we be flexible to allow them to attend that and be a part of that with their child or their family life? A healthy work culture is important. And some of the things that contribute to a healthy work culture are psychological safety and policies and procedures that promote work-life balance. Psychological safety is a culture of respect, trust, and openness, where it's not risky to raise ideas or concerns. Bullying is not allowed, it's not tolerated. There's diversity, inclusion. People are invited and supported to raise issues that are of concern and that are risky. And also that the leaders in the organization model work-life balance themselves. Now, for example, if we say we have an organization that promotes work-life balance, but nobody shows up to staff meetings, or if we have a boss that emails you at midnight and says that they want you to get a response right away, that's not work-life balance. So leaders in the organization need to model a healthy culture, leave on time, not be working extended hours. And if they are, they need to be clear about their expectations of others in working extended hours. However, it is the way we are, and if we walk our talk, is more powerful than anything we can say. The physical environment is also important to promote work-life balance. We need to make sure that people have the right tools, the right equipment, the right resources, the right number of people to address the workload, and clear expectations about what is not in the boundaries of their workload. They need space for proper breaks. There needs to be proper lighting, and ergonomics are all part of that physical environment that promote work-life balance. Relationships are really important too. So often we talk about people not being, chit-chatting at work, or is that that's using company time. That we spend so many of our hours at work, and we're relational beings. It's important that we promote opportunities for building relationships. That enhances teamwork. It also enhances people's well-being and sense of belonging to something. And we can do that in formal ways through regular meetings. It can be social gatherings. Some people use potluck lunches, even just having space where people can have lunch and conversations together so that they have a connection with each other. It's easier to show care and concern for each other when you feel like you're being cared about as well. And when we have care and concern for other people, it increases satisfaction and enables positive working relationships within teams. Engagement is another way that you can promote work-life balance. When people really are engaged in the decisions that affect their work and their work life, they're engaged in setting goals, and they have connection to their purpose and the purpose of the organization, they are more likely to have satisfaction and have join in on whatever it is that the organization is trying to achieve. Motivation is increased if people are clear about purpose, if it's connected to their own purpose, if they have autonomy to do the work, and they can achieve mastery. Competitive wages are also important, and that some of the research on motivation have shown is that that's a hygiene factor, or you need to have enough pay to be able to pay your bills, to put food on the table. And beyond that, the pay and wages are just they're there. They don't increase satisfaction over time. There needs to be enough, but they don't. Increased pay doesn't necessarily include increased satisfaction, motivation, or people's willingness to stay in an organization. So let's look at some of the individual strategies. So the individual strategies start with your self-awareness. So what is important for you? Have you ever stopped to think about what does work-life balance mean for you, and what is your optimum work-life balance? Taking time to know what things are important to you, where you want to focus your time, is a critical for helping you to make decisions about where you want to be. What is it that you value most in your life? What is the life that you want to create for yourself? Then take time to notice, like, where is your time and energy right now? Where is your attention? You might have a dream for how you want to live your life, and sometimes we can get caught up in the hamster wheel of doing and lose track of, are we really paying attention to the things that are important to us now? So there's an importance of pausing and reflecting and looking at, how am I doing? So there's at a mental level to do that. It's also noticing what's happening in your body. Our bodies are really fine-tuned instruments, and if we're getting out of balance, it's often the first place where we start to notice that change. So what are the signals that my body's giving me? Are my shoulders up around my ears? Am I tense somewhere? Is my back hurting? Is my neck hurting? So what are the things that is my body trying to say to me? What's my mood? What's going on? How do I feel? Am I short with people? You might want to ask your partner or your children or your coworkers, how am I doing? How is my mood with you? Am I sad? Am I angry? Am I easily triggered by things? Noticing when you're out of balance is really the first step of making changes that will get you back into your work-life balance. This grid is a bit of a tool that you can use. Right now, we've got it populated with a few things that are family, health, wealth, and finances, spiritual. You would want to put maybe work there, schooling, um, anything that is an important part of your life right now. So if you put it on a grid like that with the scale of 1 to 10, and then if you score each of them with 1 being not really feeling too good about it, and 2 being or 10 being I'm really feeling happy about where I am with my attention and what I'm doing with that, then you go around and score each of those areas that are important to you, and then connect the dots. So just go around and you just look and say, where am I in balance and where am I out of balance? So I might be really in balance in my leisure, but I'm out of balance with my work home. I'm out of balance with my health. I'm out of balance with my family. So this can give you a bit of a picture of how you're in balance right now. And then if you look at it and just say, well, where would I like to be on each of these? Then I can make a plan or a decision on where do I want to focus some time now to get into balance. Of course, our work-life balance is dynamic. When we're thinking again in this COVID reality, there are things that are demanding our attention that we might never have thought about. We might feel a little bit overbalanced in our family life as we try to work from home and help children with schooling and have meetings on Zoom and try to figure out how to get groceries at the right times. So the external environment will have impacts on it. And what's important is that you learn to flex in that and then adjust when you get back. It's too easy to get into a habit of working, for instance, working an extra 2 hours a day or working on weekends and that starts to become a habit or a pattern when it doesn't have to be. So it's really about noticing, deciding what's important, and making a choice about what's next. Nope, the annotation stayed there. Go back. See if I can delete that annotation. There. Sorry about that. So the other thing that's really important in work-life boundaries is work-life balance is setting boundaries. It's I like this quote from Brene Brown. She talks about braving the wilderness, and boundaries is a really big element of that. And she says, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves even when we risk disappointing others. So very often we think of boundaries as a bad thing, but it's about walling off. But on the contrary, it's an important way to declare what you are and not available to. And when we're clear about our boundaries and on our own boundaries and respect the boundaries of others, that generates trust, it generates respect, and it enables us to be able to stick with our work-life balance objectives and goals. There was one example that was given with a boss who came to the accountant and said, oh, we have a proposal due tomorrow. You're going to have to stay and work late. And the person said, no, I can't work late tonight. And although it was shocking to the person, the boss, when they asked her, they realized that that person had set a very clear boundary. They had a family event that was important and they could not do that. And while it was a bit, it took the boss aback, it was important for the individual to declare that, and the boss really respected the person for it. The other thing to do is prioritize activities, and this can be true at work or at home. Very often we get often we get caught up in false urgency, and we are so busy responding and reacting to the urgent requests, or what seems to be urgent requests, that are maybe not very important, that we don't get to the things that are important but maybe not urgent. So if you see this scale, this quadrant, the upper right is important but not urgent. Upper left is urgent and important. Bottom left, urgent but not important, and bottom right is not urgent and not important. So examples of that might be in the upper left, urgent and important, is about a deadline-driven project. It could be, if you work in a government agency, it's a call from the deputy to say he needed something right away. That becomes urgent and important. But sometimes there's deceptive or elusive urgent but not important. So it's somebody else's emergency, not yours. Phone calls that interrupt you, that are not in urgent at the moment. Some meetings are not urgent and they're not important, or they may feel like they're urgent. You're being called to an urgent meeting, but it might not be important in terms of your context. Not urgent and not important are when sometimes I get lost in Google land, and you end up looking at something and going down a rabbit hole in a search. Some phone calls or some other time wasters. But where we really need to be trying to spend more of our time is the important but not urgent. And what that is working on our quality, our prevention, or things that are going to save us time down the road if we invest time now. So that's planning, it's relationship building, it's quality improvement activities, doing that reflection and seeing what have I learned. At home, it's a home maintenance. What do I need to do to prevent a little disaster that's going to take a lot of time and money later to work on? So what I really encourage you to do is, when you're starting to feel into overwhelming, is to take this grid and either put it on a piece of paper or take sticky notes and write down and try to categorize them into where they belong. And the things that are in the bottom right quadrant, you can just take away. The bottom left ones, that's another thing you can either take away or reduce. You definitely have to attend to some of the urgent and important activities, and that's some of the things we've learned right now in this COVID environment, that really see about scheduling in time for the important but not urgent, which is going to actually provide the balance for you later on. What a lot of my clients have also said lately with this COVID crisis, that it's amazing all of the things that seem so urgent and so pressing and such a priority have actually fallen off the plate now that we're in this other environment. So it's helping them to see that maybe some of the urgency that they were feeling, or some of the pressing issues, were really a false urgency. An important part about health, work-life balance, is also taking care of yourself. So taking healthy breaks, or taking breaks at all. So many people think that working through their lunch, or working through their coffee break, or staying chained to their desk all day is actually going to increase their productivity or help them get things done. But in fact, it's really the opposite. Taking a break can actually increase your productivity. Now, I love this quote from Angela Zarian that I heard, is that our heart can beat for 60 to 120 times a minute for the course of our life, because it takes a pause after every beat. So pauses are a critical aspect to our work-life balance, whether it be at home or at work. It's important to get away from your desk for a while. It's important to stand and walk about. I find when I get stuck on an issue or a problem, just getting up and walking around and getting away from my desk will actually help me find the solution. Moving your body somewhat, taking breaths, doing things that bring you joy. It's important in your work-life balance to find things that feed your soul and try and do them. And whatever they are, it could be a craft, it could be singing and dancing, it could just be being with family, but making sure you find things that bring you joy in your day. And some of the ways to really start bringing joy is to focus on what we all heard Oprah used to say, that attitude of gratitude, but being in a sense of gratitude, um, appreciating what the leaves bursting out on the trees, the flowers bursting out, the smile of a child, any of those things that we can really focus on the positivity that bring joy into our hearts. That's going to elevate our mood and help us with our balance. Taking time off is important, and taking vacations. Some people brag a lot about not ever taking a day off or not having vacations, and I'm not sure what they save them for, but time off is regenerative, and when you come back with fresh perspective, both at home and away. Even just going for a walk. There was someone I read that who talked about they schedule a walking break for themselves every day, whether it be at lunchtime or in the afternoon, that they take time away from home, from work, and just be in nature is in particularly helpful, but they create breaks for themselves that are time off and time away from their normal routine. A healthy diet is really important as well. We know that I said earlier that we often get attracted to those high sugar, high carb foods when we're under stress, the quick bites that we can eat when we're feeling overwhelmed. Those foods bump your blood sugar up, and that drops it down below really quickly so that it creates a stress response. So fresh fruits and vegetables, all of these are all things that we know. And it's interesting that all of this contributes to our work-life balance. Time in nature and exercise is also important. So it's important for our health. And when we can be in nature, it gives us that pause and it feeds our happiness. There's pheromones in the trees and in nature that help us to release endorphins that increase our happiness. The same with exercise. If you've probably heard that in Japan, they prescribe forest bathing as a way to treat lots of both medical and mental health conditions because of the positive impact of just being in nature. What does that mean? So many of us in Canada are fortunate to be close to nature, or you can get to it in a short drive or transit ride, and it's important to be in that green space to increase our well-being. So it's that cycle that the happier we feel, the more opportunities we can see for positivity and optimism and hope, then that feeds our general resilience overall. And you've probably been hearing a lot about mindfulness. It's no longer just restricted to the yogis and to certain populations. Mindfulness is being incorporated into even the military, into organizations and corporations, that if we can practice mindfulness, it expands our capacity to work with, to deal with stress, to deal with change, and builds our resilience overall. Mindfulness is where it gives you an opportunity to pause and look at ourselves, reflect on our strengths, how we're showing up, and really to allow ourselves to experience what's going around us and to make other choices if we like. This is a practice that is really quite simple, that if you're starting to feel overwhelmed, you use the STOP acronym. So you just stop. Stop what you're doing, take a breath, and in fact, take 5 breaths. Just conscious breathing is a mindfulness practice where you just pay attention to your breath, breathing in and out, is what can help bring us into balance. Observe. what is it that's going on? If you go back to that earlier slide where, what's happening in my body? Is it tense? Is there pain somewhere? How is my mood right now? Am I feeling overwhelmed, sad, angry? What is the self-talk I have for myself? Am I beating up on myself about something? Just observe. And then you can make a choice. Is this something you want to continue, or is there a different path? So you proceed on a different path if it's going to take you out of that overwhelm. But just the pause can sometimes be enough to break the stress loop and to help you to see out of where you are. So in summary, work-life balance can help us to be happier, healthier, and more productive. And while workplaces have an important contribution to make in creating healthy work environments, it's up to individuals to take care of that which is in their control and to make decisions that help them to be their best selves. The more emphasis and importance that we place on work-life balance, the more resilient we will become as we navigate uncertainty and complexity. So this is a great book, and I highly recommend it, by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. It's both touching and funny. So it talks about that the three factors that seem to have the greatest influence on increasing our happiness are our ability to reframe our situation more positively, our ability to experience gratitude, and our choice to be kind and generous. So that concludes the formal part of the presentation, and I'm going to pause the recording now, and I will take any questions that you have.